Okay, next is presence. This is in the glossary. The next, we're in the P's, and the next is presence, the word presence. This central term describes the experience of the here-ness of your own existence, which emerges in relation to the other. Even if you are right now sitting alone, quote, with yourself, unquote, the presence to yourself that you may sense has its being and origin in an original relation to another being. Or to put this slightly differently, because we are social beings, the here-ness of presence can only be consciously experienced to the extent that you have been recognized as present and here with us by another. To the extent that you have been thrown into a false or outer self by the way you were recognized into existence, to that extent you may experience yourself as mainly not here, but out there in yourself, and more haunted by an absence of presence, like the newscaster of chapter 2, than actually here with the other, with the person next to you. Our unceasing aspiration to full mutuality of presence is the aspiration to the ever more complete realization of our social being, and it gives to history its moral direction. So, presence is the groundedness that we feel within ourselves. Our capacity to feel that is that we were once recognized sufficiently as here with someone else. We were once loved, in other words, held, so that we are capable of feeling present with the other in our center. It's a social truth, not an individual truth. You may be sitting alone, but your capacity, or you may be meditating by yourself, to get in touch with your present self, your present sense of presence. But your capacity to feel that way and do that is because it's when you were born into the world, you were embraced, held, affirmed, recognized, so that you can feel that presence. That's what it means to be a social being. And in our world, if we could sustain that experience of presence to one another everywhere, we would instantly solve the world's problems, because we would all be able to enter into each other's presence, feel the mutuality we are to one another, and stop killing each other and humiliating each other and running away from each other and pretending for each other, and all the things that we do in the arena of the false self, where we're kind of infinitely separated from each other, except by the umbilical cord of presence that ties us together in a social universe. So even when we are in a very artificial environment, you can still experience the residual sense of connectedness to each other. I mean, sometimes in a movie there'll be a scene where I saw this last night in a movie called Borgen, a TV show, Danish TV show, where the politician breaks down on stage, and then people kind of gather around the person, because of course that residual sense of presence is there, but it's being pushed away and denied by the circulating field of the alienated self, of the false self. And when you're trapped in the false self rotation, the feeling of presence is attenuated and suppressed. It's like you get quite far from it. It spins quite, your outer self is quite far away from who you really are as you perform and perform and perform. In all the ways that you're conditioned, first as a child, then that converts through school, and then that converts through work and the family, where all these unfoldings of roles in an alienated environment can occur. So the goal is, the goal of social movements is in significant part to recover our mutuality of presence with each other in the movement itself, and then to radiate that out into the world with greater and greater confidence, so as to thaw the compulsion, to thaw the outer self that everyone feels compelled to reproduce otherwise. So it's a theory of revolution that doesn't involve just seizing the Winter Palace or some act of violence or changing everything external so that it's equal or whatever. No, this is a theory of revolution that is a transformation of social space so that we can thaw the separation that keeps us apart through the manifestation of mutuality of presence that moves into that space and is inherently good and inherently attracting, inherently compellingly good. It's resisted for that reason, because it threatens us with humiliation. If we're going to let down, become vulnerable, and become present to each other, we run the risk of becoming humiliated, which we have internalized as a memory from our earliest life. And so it's threatening. It can be exhilarating and anxiety producing at the same time to be part of such a movement. This process is why Martin Luther King could say this famous quote, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." It bends toward justice because the arc is always being influenced by the deep underlying desire for mutuality, for true mutuality of presence, that no matter how much resistance to it there is in the culture, how much evil there is in that resistance, cruelty there is, injustice there is, the pull of social presence is greater, ultimately greater, unceasing, and helps us evolve toward justice, toward bending the curve toward justice. Okay, that's presence.